disease. You hungry, dog?
Cannibal movies are an extremely popular subsection of the horror genre, with superstars like Hannibal Lecter and Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise stealing the show. But this time, instead of the classics, we've got you a few underrated gems from the cannibal genre released in the last 4 decades. We've got your Old West settings, your post-apocalyptic settings, your suburban neighborhood dramas, and we've got a few love stories focusing on Gen Z, so hold on to your flesh tightly because these characters may want to have you for dinner. Before we get into the fun though, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Bone Tomahawk, 2015. Set in the backdrop of the 1890s, Bone Tomahawk brought together the two varying genres of cannibalism and western. We kick off the plot of this movie with a robber named Purvis arriving at a town called Bright Hope to hide his loot after his partner was killed in an ambush. The town's deputy, Chicory, after finding this out, reports Purvis to the sheriff, Franklin Hunt. During the interrogation, Purvis attempts to run away but is shot in the leg by Sheriff Franklin. With Purvis requiring medical attention, Sheriff Franklin sent out gunfighter John Bruder to get the town doctor. He instead arrived with the doctor's daughter as well as assistant Samantha O'Dwyer. Samantha arrives with her husband Arthur O'Dwyer, who also had an injured leg and was left with Deputy Nick in the sheriff's office to tend to Purvis's wounds. But upon his return after checking on the death of a stable boy, Sheriff Franklin found Purvis, Samantha, and Deputy Nick to be kidnapped with only an arrow left behind as their only clue. Discussing the arrow with the professor, an educated Native American, Sheriff Franklin found the arrow to belong to a tribe referred to as troglodytes by the professor, a group of inbred cannibals. Realizing that the missing people had been captured by the tribe, Sheriff Franklin, along with Deputy Chicory, gunfighter John Bruder, and an insistent Arthur, form a rescue group to find the missing trio. The group come across other enemies during their journey, which led to 2 killings along with the death of John's horse and the rest of their horses being stolen. Moreover, Arthur left the group behind following an increasing pain in his leg after a fight with John. The trio of rescuers soon came across the troglodytes, leading to the death of John, while Franklin and Chicory were captured and brought to the cave where Samantha and Nick were kept. Samantha revealed to the newly arrived sheriff that Purvis had already been consumed by the tribe, whereas they get first-hand witness of the cannibalism once the tribe moved on to consume Nick. Franklin tried to trick the troglodytes into drinking from his opium-laced flask, leading to the death of a troglodyte while another fell unconscious. As punishment, Sheriff Franklin's abdomen was cut open with the flask heated on the fire to be put in the wound. But before the troglodytes were successful, Arthur arrived and helped the sheriff in killing the leader of the tribe. Arthur left with Samantha and Deputy Chicory, while a wounded Sheriff Franklin decided to stay behind to take care of the rest of the troglodytes to stop them from ever attacking Bright Hope. As the remaining trio exited the cave, they noticed 2 pregnant troglodyte women whose arms and legs were amputated while their eyes were blinded through stakes. Bone Tomahawk was a masterpiece by first-time director Stephen Craig Zahler in reinventing the Western genre. It had a limited theatrical release, leading to the movie becoming an underrated and underappreciated classic by the audiences despite being loved by critics.
Famine or feast? Live or die?
Ravenous, 1999. This wouldn't be the first time a movie on this list was set in the backdrop of a war, but here we follow 2nd Lieutenant Boyd, a soldier of the U.S. Army during the Mexican-American War who managed to survive the massacre of his unit by the enemy by playing dead. When their dead bodies were being taken to the Mexican headquarters, John, in a moment of bravery, captured the location, which earned him a promotion to captain. But once his superior, Captain Slauson, found out about John's cowardly act that allowed the victory, John was sent to Fort Spencer, a remote military outpost high up in the Sierra Nevadas. At the military outpost, John became part of a 7-man group and, on his first mission, was sent to look for survivors after a stranger named Colquhoun arrived at the outpost asking for help. Colquhoun's party's wagon's train had gotten lost in the mountains until he was helped by a man named Captain Ives, who promised to show them a shorter route to the Pacific Ocean. But this ended up in the group being taken on a harder path, which led to the party getting trapped under the snow. Before John and the rest of the soldiers could leave, they were warned by a Native American American scout about the myth of the Wendigo, a horrible myth that stated any human who consumed their enemy's flesh would get their strength, but would also be cursed with an insatiable hunger for human flesh all their life. Upon reaching the location, the soldiers were shocked to find out that Colquhoun was Captain Ives, and he had actually eaten his companions, luring the soldiers to consume their flesh. Colquhoun was successful in his plan, even leading to the death of Colonel Hart, the fort's commanding officer. John managed to stay safe by hiding inside a pit and then consuming the flesh of a dead soldier. Upon his return, he was believed by no one, while Colquhoun arrived to become the new temporary commander due to his identity as Captain Ives. Colquhoun soon started killing off the soldiers at the fort one by one, while he revealed to John that he had initially consumed human flesh to cure himself of tuberculosis. Colonel Hart was also revealed to be alive, having been saved by Colquhoun through feeding on the flesh of his fellow soldiers. John and Colquhoun soon got into a fight, with John being forced to eat a stew of human flesh or be dead, following which he was captured. He was able to appeal to Colonel Hart to let him leave so that he could save Captain Slauson, who was arriving soon and was going to be eaten by Colquhoun. Colonel Hart accepted his plea but requested to be killed by John as he didn't want to live anymore as a cannibal, following which John confronted Colquhoun, leading to a fight. The fight finally ended as John trapped himself and Colquhoun in a large bear trap, with Colquhoun taunting him that he would live by eating John's flesh. However, Colquhoun ended up dying first, while John also accepted his own death. Captain Slauson soon arrived at the fort, unknowingly eating the stew made of human flesh left cooking on the fire. The screenwriter of Ravenous, Ted Griffin, wrote the plot by combining elements from two real-life incidents of the Donner Party and of Alfred Packer, who in the 1870s survived after eating 5 of his companions while being snowbound in the San Juan Mountains. The movie, using the theme of cannibalism, critiqued the ideas of colonialism, capitalism, and manifest destiny, with the insatiable hunger for human flesh being directly correlated to the insatiable hunger for power. A truly underrated gem that needs to be watched. Bones and All. 2022. Set in 1988, we follow a teenager named Marin Yearly who, during a sleepover with her friends, ate the finger of one of her friends. Her single father, Frank, who had known about Marin's cannibal urges since she murdered her babysitter when she was 3, relocated her to a new town. Soon after she turned 18, Frank abandons her with a message where he wishes her to be able to overcome her cannibal urges. This ended up leading Marin to find her long-absent mother, Janelle, in Minnesota. During her journey, she also met another cannibal eater, an old man named Sully, who invited her to feed off a dying old woman, while also revealing that cannibals can recognize each other through scent and would never eat one of their own. However, Marin soon left after realizing Sully's growing obsession with her. Reaching Indiana, Marin ran into another eater, this time a bit closer to her age, a guy named Lee. Lee helped Marin stop a drunk customer from harassing a woman, and she later found that Lee had eaten the man. The duo soon became a couple and arrived in Kentucky, Lee's hometown. The cracks in their relationship soon started showing once Lee seduced and then killed an amusement park employee for feeding, who Marin found out to be with a wife and child. They soon reached Minnesota after this, where Marin found her mother, Janelle, locked in a psychiatric hospital, and it's revealed that she tried to eat her own hand. Upon being handed a letter from her mother by a nurse, she found her mother to be believing that cannibals deserve to be dead rather than living like monsters. Marin was then particularly traumatized by her mother trying to eat her, leading her to leave Lee, though she later returned to Kentucky, and the couple reconciled. Lee's sister, Kayla, revealed to Marin that he had killed their abusive father with Lee, soon adding that it happened after their father had tried to eat him, although he was particularly disgusted by his own enjoyment. The couple soon moved to Michigan, trying to live a normal life, but it didn't end up lasting long, as Marin found Sully in her apartment one day while she was alone. Being held at knife point, Marin got help from an oncoming Lee, but he was soon stabbed fatally after he found out that his sister, Kayla, had become one of Sully's victims. As his final wish before dying, he asked Marin to eat him, bones and all, another underappreciated gem that had gotten a limited release in theaters, and the movie's financial underperformance was also attributed to the declining interest of audiences in prestige films following the COVID-19 pandemic. Quoting director Luca Guadagnino, he described the movie to be a very romantic story about the impossibility of love and yet the need for it, even in extreme circumstances. And you should give it a watch if two people transcending the impossibility of love is something you'd like to experience. Cannibal Apocalypse, 1980. Didn't I say there was a running theme with these movies being set in the backdrop of war? This one's set in the backdrop of post-Vietnam War America, and we follow a man named Norman Hopper who woke up from a nightmare. He was dreaming of the time he was bitten by a prisoner of war, Charlie Bukowski, who was infected by a virus that could turn humans into cannibals. He soon received a phone call from this same old friend and fellow soldier, Charlie, who invited him out for a drink, but Norman turned it down as he noticed a young neighborhood girl trying to seduce him. Falling for her charms, Norman ended up biting her, but soon returned to Charlie, convincing him to surrender to the police. After returning home, Norman revealed his urges for eating human flesh to his wife Jane, but soon left after Jane received a call from Dr. Phil Mendez about Norman possibly showing signs of biting humans, similar to Charlie. Norman, though, voluntarily reached the hospital for a blood check as he noticed Charlie and a vet he bit, Tommy, being sedated. Norman's doctor was soon attacked by a nurse who was bitten earlier by Norman, leading to Charlie and Tommy being free. With the police hot on the trail of the cannibal virus carriers, Norman and Charlie drove off in an ambulance while Tommy took off in a stolen car. The trio took refuge inside a sewer but couldn't manage to run for long as Charlie was shot dead by the police while Tommy was killed by a flamethrower. A wounded Norman returned to his house while Jane was leaving to find him, but their reunion was stopped by an infected Dr. Mendez who bit Jane. Norman shot Dr. Mendez as the couple reunited. With the police arriving, 2 gunshots could be heard, signaling the death of Norman and Jane. As their bodies are taken away, 2 neighborhood children infected by the cannibal virus look on as we saw the hand of their missing aunt being hidden inside the fridge. Cannibal Apocalypse is a cheesy 80s horror which uses the cannibal virus as a reflection on the pain that the Vietnam War soldiers had brought back home, leading to the destruction of families and lives with a little bit of the not-so-secret infidelity of married couples sprinkled in. A great watch for the 80s nostalgia lovers who couldn't get enough of that era's cheesiness. Raw, 2060. A strict vegetarian, Justine arrived at a veterinary school where her sister, Alexia, had been studying and her parents had met before marriage. Justine soon met her roommate, Adrian, and was also introduced to a week-long hazing ritual set up by the seniors. The hazing began with the freshmen being splattered with blood and forced to eat raw rabbit kidneys. Initially refusing to eat the kidney due to being vegetarian, Justine was forced by her own sister, Alexia, leading her to get an itchy rash all over her body due to food poisoning. Soon, Justine began craving meat, but due to her embarrassment, Adrian offered to take her to a gas station to eat chicken sandwiches. Later, while hanging out with Alexia, who tried to give Justine a bikini wax, the sisters ran into an accident. While trying to remove the wax strip with scissors, Justine kicked Alexia, which led to one of her fingers being severed and fainting. Initially worried, Justine soon picked up Alexia's severed finger and ate it, which was noticed by Alexia. Alexia, realizing Justine's growing hunger, took her to a deserted road where she caused a car crash by jumping in front of an oncoming car. Alexia took out one of the passengers to eat, giving the other to Justine, although she remained reluctant. During another hazing ritual, Justine was splattered with paint and forced to make out with a boy, which ended horribly, as Justine bit the middle of his bottom lip off. Justine later ate that chunk of flesh in the shower, sharing this secret with Adrian, leading to them having sex and Justine biting her own arm to suppress her craving. Justine and Alexia's growing differences soon reached a head after Alexia humiliated Justine while she was drunk at a party and walking on all 4 limbs. The 2 sisters soon got into a public fight after Justine realized what happened at the party, leading to the duo biting each other, but they soon helped each other as they returned to their dorm. The next morning, Justine woke up beside Adrian to find herself in a pool of his blood with his right leg eaten and a stab wound on his back. Despite being furious, Justine helped Alexia clean up, following which the older sister was soon arrested for the murder of Adrian while Justine was sent back home. Justine's father, as a way to comfort her, revealed how he failed to get her mother's attention back in school, the reason for which he realized after kissing her for the first time. Justine's father goes on to reveal a scar on his lip, then opens his shirt to reveal chunks of flesh missing. In the final minutes, Justine's father assured her that she too would find a way to control her hunger. Raw, through its cannibal themes, follows 2 particular journeys of Justine, the first being that of her trying to fit into a new space where she had no support of her family and had to deal with her struggles on her own. The second journey is Justine initially following her older sister Alexia's advice, believing her to be the well-adjusted one, but soon found herself to be growing distant as Alexia's choices became too much for Justine to agree with. However, through all the growing pains, the sisterhood remained intact even in the aftermath of a murder. Raw is an amazing coming-of-age story that deals with cannibalism as a version of the various personal struggles teens go through as they move out and go out into the world on their own, creating their own sense of self. Motel Hell, 1980. We follow farmer Vincent Smith and his younger sister Ida, who lived on a farm attached to the motel known as Motel Hello. Vincent was well known for his smoked meat, but what wasn't known was the fact that the meat belonged to humans. Vincent would get his victims by setting up traps on a nearby road, and following their capture, he would bury his victims up to their necks in his garden. He would cut their vocal cords to stop them from making any noise, and he would feed the victims until they were ready to be cooked. Vincent's sister Ida would help him in these gruesome acts, while his younger brother, Sheriff Bruce, remained oblivious to all of this as he had moved out of the farm. Vincent's life changed one day after he took a couple hostage on the road by shooting the front tire of their motorcycle. The man named Bo was buried up to his neck in Vincent's garden, while the woman named Terry was taken to the motel where she was informed about the passing of her boyfriend. With nowhere to go, Terry decided to stay back at the motel, gradually falling in love with Vincent, while Bruce unsuccessfully tried to seduce Terry. One day, as Vincent tried to teach Terry how to cook his popular smoked meat, out of jealousy, Ida tried to drown her. Vincent saves her life and she falls head over heels in love with him, but her advances are met with rejection from Vincent because he wanted to wait till marriage. Soon, Terry and Vincent get married, despite Bruce's warnings to her about Vincent not being a good man. Bruce, though, later returned that evening to rescue Terry, suspecting Vincent to be behind the recent disappearances, but was knocked out by Ida. Holding Vincent at gunpoint, Ida forced him to reveal to Terry that his famous smoked meat was actually made of human meat, horrifying Terry. With Terry trying to run away, Vincent tied her to a conveyor belt as he faced a recently freed Bo and some of his other victims, which he managed to overcome. Vincent's final fight came against his brother Bruce as the duo fought each other using chainsaws, leading to Vincent's demise. With Ida buried head first in the garden, Bruce and Terry left the motel as the sign exploded, destroying the place for good. Made on a shoestring budget, Motel Hell was great in dealing with the black humor of the plot, along with gaining an almost cult status, with it being seen as a satire of movies like Psycho and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This movie is also referenced in modern literature, such as in author Thomas Ligotti's short story Metaphysica Moral, another definitive watch for your 80s horror list. The Bad Batch, 2016. In a dystopian world, a young woman named Arlen was sent to a desert outside Texas after being deemed undesirable by the government, left to fend for herself as part of the Bad Batch. Unfamiliar with this new land where no law applied, Arlen was immediately kidnapped by two women in a golf cart. Upon waking up chained, Arlen found her right arm and leg being cut off by one of the women, but Arlen managed to convince the woman to unchain her, leading to their death and Arlen making her escape by crawling on a skateboard. A mute hermit rescued her and found her a new home in the form of a makeshift hut called the Comfort, which hosted all-night raves. 5 months passed by as Arlen became accustomed to her new life with a prosthetic leg, as she kept a lookout in the desert for more cannibals. While investigating a golf cart similar to the ones used by the two cannibal women, Arlen found a little girl with a woman scavenging garbage. Accusing the woman of being a cannibal, Arlen killed her while taking in the little girl, Honey, but quickly lost track of her after she took a psychedelic drug and wandered out into the desert. Found by the Miami Man, Honey's father and leader of the cannibals, he asked Arlen to take him to Honey, and the duo grew closer on their journey to the Comfort. However, Miami Man ended up getting shot in the chest as Arlen reluctantly returned to the Comfort to look for Honey. Upon entering, Arlen found Honey staying at the mansion of Comfort's cult-like leader, the Dream, along with his harem of young pregnant women. Manipulating the Dream by agreeing to be a part of his harem, Arlen ended up holding a woman hostage by hiding a gun inside her prosthetic leg and then running away with Honey. Taking a golf cart, Arlen and Honey returned to Miami Man, who had been healed by the mute hermit who helped Arlen in the beginning. With father and daughter reunited, Arlen implied wanting to stay in the desert with them instead of returning to the Comfort. Honey, accustomed to the good food of the Comfort, asked Miami Man for spaghetti, but he instead took her pet bunny and roasted it for the three of them. As they sat in front of a fire while Honey cried for her bunny, Miami Man and Arlen looked into each other's eyes smiling. The Bad Batch was primarily released through film festivals, followed by streaming platforms with only a limited theater release, making this movie an underrated classic dealing with the survival of a differently abled person in a savage world. Fresh, 2022. We follow Noah, a young woman from Portland who ran into Steve at the supermarket as he tried to flirt with her, leading them to exchange numbers. Over several dates, the two grew closer, following which Steve invited Noah for a weekend getaway to a surprise location, which Noah agreed to despite the warnings of her best friend, Molly. Arriving at Steve's luxurious home, Noah soon fell unconscious due to Steve drugging her drink and woke up to find herself chained to the floor. Steve revealed himself to actually be a human meat butcher who both consumed human meat as well as sold it to wealthy clients and abducted young girls regularly because the clients preferred their meat. Steve also informed Noah that he was going to keep her alive for a long time to keep her meat fresh and would remove her body parts surgically, piece by piece, over time. Noah also got in contact with another captive in Steve's house named Penny, who had survived multiple of Steve's surgeries, and informed Noah about Melissa, another one of Steve's victims who went insane over time. During a chance to shower, Noah attempted to run away, leading to Steve punishing her by surgically removing meat from her buttocks. Meanwhile, Molly investigated Noah's disappearance by checking Steve online and finding out his real identity was Brendan, a man with a wife and kids. Molly visited Steve's wife, Anne, to inform her of his affair, but soon got captured by Anne and a recently arriving Steve once Molly found Noah's phone ringing inside Steve's pocket. Trying to manipulate Steve, Noah made herself more appealing to him by faking her interest in human meat. Later, through a case of souvenirs that contained all of Steve's victims' belongings, Noah recognized Molly's phone and went on to bite Steve's private part during oral sex. Using the opportunity, Noah ran away from the house after freeing Molly and Penny as Steve ran after them with a handgun. The trio attacked Steve together, with Noah shooting him dead after getting hold of his gun. Noah soon came across Steve's wife Anne as the wife tried to strangle her, only for Molly to interrupt them and beat Anne to death with a shovel. With a limited theatrical run, Fresh was primarily released through streaming services where it became the second most streamed movie. Fresh took the modern idea of dating and presented the challenges that women could face in the world of social media. The movie also commented on the objectification and commodification of the female body through its theme of cannibalism. Along with this, the feminist take was also presented, where the female protagonists became their own saviors in the end. Fresh, as the name suggests, is a fresh take on the horror genre, centered around women being the victims of the story and turning it on its head. Parents, 1989. Set in 1958, the Lamley family, consisting of the father Nick, mother Lily, and their 10-year-old son Michael, move into a California suburban neighborhood from Massachusetts. Michael was a socially awkward child with an overactive imagination that made making new friends tough for him, making the move overall quite difficult for him. This became worse for him after he accidentally walked in on his parents having sex one night, believing them to be biting each other, and then witnessing Nick cutting a corpse at his work in the Division of Human Testing at Toxico. Traumatized by the two events, and after dreaming about finding severed human body parts in the basement of his house, Michael was fully convinced into believing his parents were cannibals. Michael shared this with his school counselor, Millie Dew, who, to convince Michael that it was all his imagination, visited the Lamley family house. Upon checking the basement together, much to Millie's shock, they found a corpse to be present there, leading to Michael running upstairs while Millie was killed. Later, after his parents' arrival, Michael was forced to eat possible human meat by Nick, but Michael ended up stabbing Nick in the shoulder. Frustrated by Michael, Nick tried to kill him, but ended up killing Lily instead, who was trying to protect her son. Continuing to chase Michael around, Nick breaks the gas line while pulling the wine shelf onto himself, leading to his death. Michael managed to escape the house before it blew to pieces and was soon put into the care of his grandparents. After putting him to bed, Michael's grandparents leave behind a suspicious-looking meat sandwich for him, hinting at them being possible cannibals just like his parents, and Michael's nightmares being far from over. Despite failing during its initial release, the movie gained a wide appeal in the last few years. Many interpret the cannibal theme to represent the conservative family structure that children are indoctrinated into. Delicatessen, 1991. Set in a post-apocalyptic France where food was in short supply and grain became the new currency, a landlord named Clapet ran a butcher shop on the ground floor of his shabby apartment building. As a way to lure victims, Clapet posted job vacancies in newspapers and later killed and butchered the new employees to be sold off as cheap meat to the tenants of the building. An unemployed circus clown named Lewison soon joined Clapet's butcher shop as the new hire, and his amazing skills with his trick knife made Clapet reluctant to kill him. Lewison went on to start a romance with Clapet's daughter Julie, while also charming many of the tenants, although many others worried about their own safety if and when they needed meat. Julie, meanwhile, knowing her father's practice of killing new hires for meat, worried about Lewison's safety. Clapet soon started his attempts to kill Lewison, but failed until he found help with some of the tenants ganging up against Lewison and Julie. In the end, as Clapet tried to kill Lewison with his trick knife, not knowing how to use it, he accidentally causes his own death. Following this, Lewison and Julie danced on a rooftop after finally being safe, and the butcher shop ultimately shut down. Delicatessen featured a remarkable plot set in a post-apocalyptic world. Cannibalism here became a great symbol for the needy fighting each other for the bare minimum to survive, while those with enough capital controlled everyone's fate, although the film had a more righteous approach with the landlord finally getting his comeuppance. Eating Raoul, 1982. We follow a married couple, Paul and Mary Bland. Paul, who was a wine snob, worked at a cheap wine shop with his attractive wife, Mary, who worked as a nurse in a hospital where most of the patients would continuously try to grope her. Once Paul got fired from his job, the couple feared that their dream of opening up their own restaurant would never come to fruition. However, an opportunity soon opened for the sex-despising couple who lived in an apartment where regular swinger parties were hosted. One night, when a drunk swinger arrived at their apartment and tried to rape Mary, Paul, in a fit of rage, unintentionally killed the man using their cast iron frying pan. Thinking that nobody would miss the man, the couple stole his money and left the body in a trash compactor. Once the incident repeated, the couple realized that this could be their new way of making money. Taking advice from Doris the dominatrix, a regular at the swingers parties, the couple posted ads in the Hollywood press to lure men looking for kinky sex to their apartment and kill them with their frying pan. Their plan was soon discovered by the locksmith, Raoul Mendoza, who broke into apartments to steal and ended up finding the Bland couple's latest victim. Raoul also joined their scheme, taking the responsibility of disposing of the body and selling any of the victim's possessions, like cars, which would then be divided between him and the couple. One night, when Paul was out at the market, one of Mary's clients arrived late and tried to rape her, but Raoul arrived just in time to kill the man. This led to Mary and Raoul starting an affair, while Paul, aware of the affair, tried his best to get rid of him, but to no avail. The couple were able to get the money required for the restaurant after killing a large number of guests at a swingers party, but a drunken Raoul arrived in their apartment, threatening them for not sharing the money. Though Raoul ended up meeting his end in Mary's hand, and with no food to serve the soon arriving real estate agent, Raoul became the meal. Mary and Paul were able to open their own restaurant, naming it Paul and Mary's Country Kitchen. Eating Raoul was a cult classic from the moment of its release, with accompanying media such as a single-issue comic book, an off-Broadway musical adaptation, and even a planned sequel that didn't end up working out. Mary and Paul went on to become iconic characters that would make cameos in the 1986 movie Chopping Mall. Eating Raoul even went on to be added to the Criterion Collection almost 40 years after its release. The Feast, 2021. A wealthy family made up of politician Gwyn, his wife Glenda, and their two adult sons, Gudo, a drug addict, and Weird, who was preparing for a triathlon with a strict diet, were going to host a dinner party at Glenda's inherited estate in the Welsh Mountains. Expected guests were Mare, a neighboring farmer who grew up with Glenda, and Euros, a businessman who had been drilling for minerals on the family's land. A girl from the neighboring village named Katie was hired by Glenda to help cater the party, but her arrival also seemingly signaled a bad omen for the family. Katie's emotions upon observing the family would lead to physical consequences, such as a muddy stain appearing on a clean tablecloth when she heard the gunshots for killing two rabbits, Gwyn experiencing sudden noise and pain whenever he confronted Katie, and a wine bottle exploding in Euros' hand when he accused Katie of slacking off. Soon, Mare arrived, informing the family about her husband, Iori, being caught up helping a person retrieving a car from a lake. Once her work was finished, Katie went into the forest, revealing her magical connection to nature as vines and flowers came alive and encircled her body. The purpose of the dinner party was soon revealed to be convincing Mare to allow drilling and mining on her land in the most promising spot called the Rise. Mare, though, ended up refusing because of the local belief of a goddess residing there. Meanwhile, Gwyrd was seduced by Katie and taken to the Rise, where Gudo lay helplessly on the ground with his leg becoming necrotic and infested with maggots. Gudo, under the influence of drugs, revealed that Gwyrd was no longer a doctor due to raping many comatose female patients, which led to Katie forcing Gwyrd to cut off Gudo's maggot-infested leg. Following this, Katie and Gwyrd engage in sex, leading to a painful experience due to Katie hiding a shard of glass in her privates. Upon getting a call, Mare and the rest of the family inside found out that the real Katie had died, and it was the goddess controlling Katie's body, leading to Mare leaving the party. Katie returned to the house with Gwyrd carrying the corpse of Gudo, who soon passed out from blood loss himself. Katie's father killed Gwen by inserting a skewer into his ear, while Euros, who had been busy eating leftovers, was served Gudo's maggot-infested severed leg by Glenda. The situation ended with Euros being killed using a shotgun by Glenda and then slitting her own throat. The bodies were all burned down as the goddess returned to her resting place, the Rise. The Feast is an amazing lesson on how nature can take revenge on the wealthy for its exploitation, albeit in a more personified and magical manner. The film is an underrated gem from the UK that mixes themes of folklore, cannibalism, and environmental awareness. We Are What We Are, 2013. We follow a reclusive religious family called the Parkers, who were located in the Catskill Mountains, about to start a period of ritual fasting. The family suffered the loss of their matriarch, Mrs. Parker, when she was out running an errand. Her husband, Frank, even refused to identify her body later out of grief, sending their two daughters, Rose and Iris, instead. An argument broke out between the two daughters about whether their yearly ritual was going to be held or not. It was soon revealed that Frank had abducted a young woman and was keeping her captive, later forcing his daughters to kill and butcher her for the family's consumption. Dr. Barrow, who had delivered the Parkers' youngest son, Rory, during birth, was growing suspicious of the Parkers being responsible for his missing daughter and sought help from Deputy Anders for an investigation. However, his investigation reached a halt once found by Iris, as Anders confessed his feelings and the couple made love. This didn't last too long, as after being found, Anders was killed by Frank, while Dr. Barrow realized that Mrs. Parker was actually suffering from kuru, an illness caused by cannibalism. Frank, frustrated and grief-stricken, decided to put powder arsenic in the dinner to cause a murder-suicide. But his daughters, having found out his intentions, prevent this. Dr. Barrow arrived at the Parkers' house soon after to confront Frank about his daughter, leading to a fight between the two fathers. Frank ended up getting his gun to shoot Barrow, only to end up injuring Iris instead, who tried to protect Barrow. Rose and Rory, meanwhile, took refuge in the house of their neighbor, but upon knocking out Barrow, Frank arrived at the house, killing the neighbor and taking the children home, once more forcing the children to eat the poisoned food and also telling Rose how she looked like her late mother. The daughters end up attacking Frank, biting into their father and ripping him apart until he died, with a barely conscious Barrow witnessing the attack. Rose returned Barrow's daughter's hair ornament, placing it on his chest, and the three children left town the next morning. On their way, Rose carried a diary given to her by Frank earlier, which documented their ancestors' history with cannibalism. The sins of the father would always haunt the children, but someone had to break the cycle of abuse that was shown in the movie through cannibalism. Rose's final action was her trying to break the cycle of pain that was perpetuated by her father, Frank, and the diary is a reminder that no one can outrun their past. Despite its limited release, We Are What We Are left an amazing experience for its viewers. Going through it is well worth the watch. Long Pigs, 2007. Following a crazier plot, Long Pigs followed two young as well as desperate filmmakers as they follow the ultimate movie protagonist, a 33-year-old cannibal serial killer named Anthony McAllister, who agreed to the two filmmakers following his horrifically violent lifestyle. The mockumentary initially followed Anthony in his day-to-day life, holding a job as a valet and also justifying his cannibal lifestyle through ecological and philosophical reasoning, which the two filmmakers identify with. But as the investigation carries on, Anthony's philosophies become ever-changing, while his past becomes muddled with question marks as facts and fiction begin merging together. The movie also gave a special appearance by Merle, the father of a kidnapped young girl who had never been found. The girl, who also happened to be Anthony's first child victim. Realizing how much of his life he had opened up to the two young filmmakers, Anthony ended the film by killing the duo and later confessing to all his crimes, accepting his punishment, and soon releasing a cookbook as well. Filmed in 2003 and then edited for over 4 years, after which the movie finally got a release, Long Pigs is the brainchild of its two creators, Chris Power and Nathan Hines. Created in the form of found footage with actors so talented that one might forget they're even watching a fictional movie, with Anthony Alviano primarily standing out with his performance as the cannibal serial killer, it's a must-watch in the found footage meets cannibal serial killer genre. Antropophagus, 1980. 5 Italian travelers, Andy, Maggie, Daniel, Arnold, and Carol, arrive in Greece, hoping to spend their vacation going through the various islands. They meet with Julie, who requested them for a ride to a particular island where her friends reside. Except for Carol, most of the travelers agree to Julie's request and they start sailing to the island. During the ride, while checking her tarot card readings, Carol found that their arrival on the island would lead to something bad. Upon reaching the island and having hurt her ankle, a pregnant Maggie stays behind on the boat with its owner, though he was soon beheaded by a mysterious figure, leading to Maggie being kidnapped. With no way back, the rest of the group explores the town located there, finding it to be stranded and noticing a woman in a black dress writing on a dusty glass window, telling them to go away. After noticing a rotten, cannibalized corpse in a house, the group decided to return, but with the boat still far away, they ended up staying at Julie's friend's house. The youngest blind daughter of the family owning the house wounded Daniel in a panic, and after calming down, ranted about a madman who could smell blood roaming the island. Andy and Arnold left the house in search of antibiotics for Daniel, while Carol notices Daniel flirting with Julie and leaves the house mad at him. It was during this time that Daniel is attacked by a mysterious killer who ripped out his throat but left Henrietta unharmed. The next morning, Julie, Carol, Andy, and Arnold found a mansion belonging to Klaus Wortman, who was presumed dead with his wife and son in a shipwreck, which also led to Klaus's sister, Ruth, losing her sanity. It was revealed that the woman in black was none other than Ruth, who hung herself soon thereafter, while Julie found a partially destroyed journal revealing Klaus to be the mysterious killer. Andy and Arnold, meanwhile, went out to get the boat that had reached shore and ended up parting ways with Arnold, entering an abandoned church with Maggie waiting inside. A flashback revealed the true story. Following the wreckage of Klaus's family, having been stranded on a raft, Klaus accidentally killed his wife while trying to convince her to consume their dead son's body to survive. Klaus ended up consuming both his wife and son while trying to survive, which drove him to madness. Regaining his killing inclination, Klaus stabs Arnold, and while dying, he watches Klaus strangle Maggie and then eat her unborn child. Klaus then returned to his mansion to slit Carol's throat and then attacked Julie just as she found his room of victims. Julie locked herself and Henrietta in the attic after running away, only for Klaus to enter the attic by breaking off the roof, leading to Henrietta's death. Julie knocked Klaus into a wall, but as she was about to be attacked by the cannibal, Andy arrived and stabbed Klaus with a pickaxe, leading to his guts falling out. As a final act of horror, Klaus ate his own intestines and died, with Andy and Julie standing near his body in utter shock. This one is a cult classic in the truest sense, and it's not for everybody, but this movie is a must-watch for true horror gore fans, as it takes credit for taking gore to a higher level than it had ever been before. The Girl with All the Gifts, 2016. In a post-apocalyptic future, humanity is on the brink of destruction due to an epidemic of a disease caused by a parasitic fungus, turning most humans into fast and mindless zombies called hungries. The last remaining hope was an ongoing cure research conducted on a small group of children carrying the disease. These seemingly normal children attend school at an army base in the home counties. Sergeant Eddie Parks led a group of soldiers guarding them, while Dr. Caroline Caldwell ran experiments on them to find a cure. Helen Justonow was the person responsible for educating them and had a special bond in particular with a girl named Melanie. On the day of her dissection, the base was attacked by hungries, leading to the death of numerous soldiers, while Melanie, along with Helen, an injured Caroline, Sergeant Eddie, soldiers Kieran Gallagher, and Dylan, managed to escape in a truck. Melanie was soon restrained to stop her from biting anyone, while Dylan was killed in an attack when the truck stopped for water and the fuel line of the truck was broken. The group reaches London on foot, hiding their smell using a masking gel and seeking refuge in an abandoned hospital. Melanie learned from Caroline about her uniqueness as one of the second-generation hungries, or neonates, which allowed her the ability to think and learn despite her hunger for living flesh. This was seen in action, as Melanie was the only one ignored by the hungries that surrounded the group the next morning, allowing Melanie to distract the group of hungries by using a stray dog. As the group moved into an abandoned mobile laboratory, pretty much all the members were being plucked out. Caroline was already dying of sepsis, while Gallagher died during a food supply run in the city. Despite saving Eddie and Helen from a group of hungries by killing their leader, Melanie soon realized that instead of being an experiment, she could be the future of the world. Melanie left Caroline and returned to the BT Towers, where a massive fungal growth was occurring, and released the airborne spores to turn everyone into hungries. Caroline ended up being killed by the hungries, while Eddie asked Melanie to kill him so that he didn't have to become a hungry. In the end, Helen remained the sole human survivor, locked inside a room that shielded her from the spores, while through a microphone she taught the human-zombie hybrid children, along with feral ones, kept in check by none other than Melanie, their new leader. Using the backdrop of a post-apocalyptic world to introduce a new race of human-zombie hybrids is an incredible feat that wasn't easily pulled off. Not to mention the other incredible feat of the author of the book also writing the screenplay, providing an authentic idea of the character of Melanie, who became the main protagonist of the story, unlike the book. Marvelous verdict! Over the past 4 decades, we sure have moved ahead of the cannibal holocaust, with the genre not only focusing on the so-called savage people, but even modern-day people who, unbeknownst to others, could be hiding a dark urge to enjoy human flesh. However, these movies aren't just talking about cannibalism, but rather critiquing different facets of our world through the gruesome act. Many of these movies have recently broken out into popular discourse, while many still remain relatively unknown to all the cinephiles out there. So don't wait around any longer and start ticking this list off fast. Who knows, we might just come up with a part 2 for you soon. That's all for now, but if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.